Hello and welcome to another edition of the Amicable Divorce Network podcast. I'm your host, Tracy Moore-Grant, founder of the Amicable Divorce Network. And as you know, with season 2 of our podcast, we are going chapter by chapter through our new book, Divorce Amicably, Your Roadmap to Resolution. And we've made it to chapter 12. Today, I am joined by one of our authors, Dennis Collard. He is a Georgia attorney, mediator, all of the things helping people resolve matters outside of the court system. And the chapter that he wrote is about why LGBTQ families will benefit from using the amicable divorce process. Thank you for joining me, Dennis.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
And thank you so much for your chapter. It's actually very good and helpful. And over time, we've seen a lot of LGBTQ couples accessing the process and the system. And why do you think that is? Why do you think this is helpful for that group of people?
Well, the LGBTQIA plus community has faced literally centuries of prejudice and misunderstanding, laws that affirmatively discriminate against them, even making intimate relations between members of the community illegal. Certain rights granted to our community, which I'm a proud member of, have only come recently. So only in 2015 did we have marriage equality. Only in the last couple of decades did we have some fundamental rights such as physical intimacy being legal or certain protections in the workplace. We still have a long way to go, and the current political climate is very challenging for members of the community. So the amicable divorce process allows what is really a very personal and intimate process to be private and handled in a sensitive manner versus court and litigation, which is essentially placing all of your intimate and most private facts and details up on a public stage, which can be very frightening for a community that has traditionally been discriminated against and is still used as a political punching bag by certain politicians. So there's a very scary history involving members of the community being in front of a judge or dealing with law enforcement or dealing with the government. And divorce is a very sensitive and stressful time for members of the community, and the amicable divorce process allows a very welcoming and understanding place for people going through divorce to be treated with respect and sensitivity by members of every profession that is involved in a divorce, including attorneys, financial planners, psychologists. It's a multidisciplinary approach, and what we all have, one thing that we all have in common is a sensitivity for and appreciation of members of the LGBTQIA plus community.
Yeah, I think it's important for anybody listening to understand that our members do sign an anti-discrimination agreement, agreeing that they would equally represent anybody that comes to them. We do not tolerate discrimination at all in our organization and are incredibly proud of the work that we've been able to do with the LGBTQIA community. It's very important to us. And something I think people need to know about the court system, of course, is that when you file a divorce, for example, which is what we're talking about today, you do not get to pick who your judge is. You are randomly assigned on a computer system. Usually there used to be a wheel, like a Wheel of Fortune wheel that we spun when we filed something. That's how old I am. But now it's a computer system. And you're randomly assigned a judge. How, I guess, scary, uncomfortable would it be for a same-sex couple to be having decision-making made by a random judge who happens to completely not support their life and who they are?
So it'd be terrifying, and one of the greatest advantages of the amicable divorce process is you completely avoid the courthouse. You completely avoid a judge. You completely avoid anyone making decisions that you haven't invited to be helpful to your case. So judges are human beings, and that comes with the good and the bad, and there are judges who are great advocates of this community, and there are judges who bring history of prejudice, or even if they do not bring an attitude of discrimination against the community, they may just not understand members of our community. So when we deal with issues like transgender members of the community, people who are transitioning from one gender to another, there's terminology, there's a nomenclature, there are terms that are sensitive to that community. There are historical norms and coping mechanisms that members of our community have used for years, because often members of the community are rejected by their own family and friends, and so the community is often just not fully understood, even by a very well-intentioned judge may just not understand.
Yeah.
And at the other end of the spectrum is that there are judges out there, unfortunately, who may actually be prejudiced against the community. Now, I do believe firmly that that is a minority of judges. That most judges at least are really trying to understand, are open-minded, and some judges are overt and very open advocates of our community. But the scary part of that is that because of the random assignment of judges, if you go to court, you might have in the same courthouse,
Yeah.
you may have a few judges who are great advocates and very understanding, and you may have a few judges who aren't. And so you're putting your life into the hands of a stranger who's going to be randomly assigned if you go the courthouse route. And the amicable divorce process completely avoids that moment of anxiety and many other moments of anxiety that are related to litigation.
Yeah, I think also with the current administration, we are seeing such a turn back away from DEI initiatives in education and prioritization. It's also, judges are generally employed by the state, so that is state funding. And so when they get their training, when they go to their conferences, it's less likely under this political climate that they are going to be even getting advanced training on these issues, particularly about, transgender children and individuals, and training that is really necessary for them to have a knowledge base to make correct and meaningful decisions in these cases. We probably can't expect there to be much progress with any sort of government funding, particularly in red states, in the next 4 years.
Yeah, unfortunately, even though there are certainly supporters of the community, the LGBTQIA plus community, all across the political spectrum, the current political climate is one in which the community is used as a political punching bag, and especially transgender people and especially transgender children. So the amicable divorce process doesn't just protect, if you will, the rights of the people who are getting divorced, but there are cases, of course, of divorce where one of the children is transgender. And so the judge needs to, understand that if you're going the litigation route. So in a climate where there is overt prejudice that's applied for political reasons, we have taken a step backward, or several steps backward. And I do agree that there's a sort of a broad and very troubling reversal of a lot of progress that really is intended to foster just an understanding and respect of just basic human rights and basic decency, regardless of your sexual orientation or gender identity. So yes, these are definitely troubling times, and these are times where you just don't want to risk any government official, including a judge, making decisions about your family. So our process was very carefully designed to respect all people, and especially sensitive moment in history is one that I believe can contribute to the protection of a lot of very vulnerable people who might otherwise face discrimination in a politically charged.
Yeah, and it would be very hard, I would imagine, for someone to really be able to know what their judge is like prior to a hearing. I imagine this is not something that you could easily Google or find out on social media. And so the anxiety and fear that would exist leading up to having the judge make a decision or having really any sort of court appearance can probably be quite overwhelmingly unsettling. You have that combined with usually a divorce or legal proceeding itself, which is already stressful, to not know who the decision maker is. So with the Amicable Divorce Network, our process, we often say it's parallel to the court system. We are still exchanging information and documents. We are still attending a mediation. We are still getting results in cases. And if you just can't reach a decision, we then encourage people to go to arbitration. And that's like a private, experienced judge. Are you an arbitrator, Dennis? I feel like you are.
I am, yes.
I am as well. And so if somebody had one of these issues in a case, they could pick you, somebody very knowledgeable in this space, to make a decision as opposed to, the random assignment of a judge.
Yeah, so arbitration as sort of the ultimate end of the amicable divorce process is something that really sets our process apart from other models that have been attempted in the U.S. and around the world that have failed because the end point under these other processes that were not successful is court. So in our process, we do everything we can to settle the case, of course, amicably through cooperation and transparency, respect. But sometimes people can still get bogged down. Divorce is difficult. So our process provides for even a bumpy road
Yeah.
in a divorce, and that is that we don't wind up in the courthouse, but someone who is a very senior, knowledgeable person called an arbitrator will listen to all of the facts and the circumstances and make a final decision. That final decision is then sent to the courthouse, and a judge simply signs it.
Yeah.
So you don't have the fear around a courthouse. Ultimately, yes, you are divorced by a judge.
Yeah.
But it is a private arbitrator that has made those final decisions. But I just want to emphasize that typically in our process, even that's not necessary. We usually don't get to that arbitration endpoint. We can resolve these cases at mediation or through other negotiation.
Yeah, even that is incredibly rare. I mean, the reality is 95% of family law cases settle outside of court. And so a lot of people don't realize that statistic is so high, and so many people pay and prepare a case for a trial that their team knows is really realistically never going to happen. It's an incredible amount of just waste. And so with this process, we've tried to catch every point, and so if people just can't get it done, that there is the arbitration option, and it's important to know you get to select your arbitrator. So if you have somebody you need who's very knowledgeable about numbers, finance, or LGBTQIA issues like yourself, you can select somebody with the experience and understanding. They're still a neutral person making a decision, but you really do get to sort of vet what is their experience and knowledge base. Like some people, they're accountants, you might need them for a complex financial case, so you can really find the right tool to solve your problem.
Yeah, and the arbitrator is part of sort of the greater community that the amicable divorce process has created. So the arbitrator would be trained in the process. Everyone who's involved is trained in the process. So you don't have anyone who is a professional coming in sort of as a stranger to the process. He doesn't really understand what we're trying to do. They bring all of their expertise. So a certified public accountant comes in as a CPA, an experienced and licensed CPA, or the attorneys who are involved, psychologists who are involved, certified divorce lending professionals.
And they're all vetted prior to being members. They're all vetted for resolution focus, experience, fair billing practices, and of course, not discriminating against any population who needs our help.
Right.
Yeah.
If the adversarial traditional litigation process, there really is a paradox that's created. Because even in that litigation process, even if you have lawyers and even if you have people trying to get divorced who are trying to be amicable, the very nature of litigation really discourages it, because you have to be at the same time preparing for an adversarial trial while you're still trying to behave in an amicable way, and the circumstances really just don't allow it, which is why you have a lot of, frankly, legal professionals who have wind up with mental health problems because you are trying to do the right thing in a system that frankly discourages respect and sharing, and everyone goes to their separate corners. So the Amicable Divorce Network removes that trial preparation or that adversarial nature of the process, but you still at the same time receive independent private legal advice from your attorneys. That's one of the great benefits of this process that makes it different than a lot of other processes that have failed, is that the attorneys are typically your initial contacts, and so they are you have your own private legal advice, because people really want that. They want to engage in an amicable process. But they have questions, and they want their questions to be answered privately so that they can make good decisions, and for their spouse to also have those private interactions with the attorney. And then other participants in the process may act as neutral, so that the CPA who might be looking at the value of a business or a psychologist who's helping with custody would be talking openly with everyone at the same time. But a critical part of the amicable divorce process is you do have your own private legal advice.
Yeah, we don't compromise confidentiality, and it's important to know that your legal advocate, your attorney, is still negotiating and advancing and advocating for you. They just aren't doing that in front of a judge. It's, to opposing counsel. It's in mediation. It's potentially in an arbitration. It's a very contained environment because the adversarial legal process is the same one that we use to convict somebody of murder, that we're using to very carefully dissect delicate families and are expected to send them healthfully on their way. But the adversarial process is designed to pick a winner. It is not designed to find the truth or to do what is best for you or your spouse or a child. The whole process is just sling as much mud as you can, and the judge will pick a winner. And a lot of people don't understand that, and it leaves people broken and not in a good frame of mind or financially stable or really wanting to co-parent now with that other person, and you're expected to do that immediately. So we definitely hope to pass people a little bit more gently into the second stage of their life post-divorce.
Yeah, litigation, our society somehow decided at some point that the way we're going to help families transition into a new phase is to call one of them a plaintiff and call the other one the defendant, and expect that there's going to be some sort of good result, especially for children. Mm-hmm. So how can people, even if they're trying, go from the adversarial crucible of litigation to cooperating in a way that allows for co-parenting? Yeah. Children's best interest. And I really do very sincerely feel, of course, that this process has incredible advantages for the LGBTQIA plus community, but especially for children of any parents.
Anyone, yeah.
Because it really allows for the parents to maintain some level of respect, even if the road gets bumpy. Amicable doesn't mean easy always. It just means that the process is going to remain on the right track. And you're not going to leave, like litigation does, basically the charred remains of a family behind when the process is over.
Yeah, I couldn't have put it better. That's very true. Usually people are standing there like, what just happened? And the very next day, they better be the best co-parents possible, or they're now in contempt of court, and it's just incredibly illogical that it is set up this way. The LGBTQIA community also has some different, often, legal processes that other professionals might not be as familiar with. For example, surrogacy. Some often have to use reproductive care in order to have children. There may be embryos that have to be accounted for. I think, as well as other issues, the court probably is not as up to speed as it needs to be on a lot of these parallel issues, ancillary issues that we often see with this community.
Family building is a very complicated area of the law. Even if you're working with what would be called, cisgender, straight folks, man and a woman building their family, whenever you have people of the same gender or transgender people who are trying to build a family, the law gets very complicated because you do have an egg, you do have a sperm, and you do have someone carrying that embryo, and these all might be different people contributing. We're all familiar with adoption, of course, of the legal process that is available to members of our community. Some politicians would not like it to be that way, but it's true. And then when you get into, for example, two women who are building a family, there may be the egg of one of the women is used. There's going to be a sperm donor. One of the women would carry that embryo. And if there's a divorce, then what are the legal rights there? And this is in my opinion, the lowest and most despicable that litigation can become, which is that some people will try to take advantage of the legal system to de-parent the other parent who was in every way a parent to the children, but because there's not that automatic legal relationship created, then that can be used as the worst kind of weapon. And I can tell you that our process simply does not tolerate that kind of attempt to de-parent. So we could have a whole separate podcast about the laws and sort of complexities that really anyone who is looking to build a a family outside of sort of the traditional way that people
Yeah.
build their family, but with the sort of the baseline of it's complicated. When you layer on top of that the unique needs of our community, the amicable divorce process is so beneficial because it allows everyone to just slow down, look at the current law, and figure out how do we need to make sure that both of these folks are fully fledged legal parents going into this. What do those documents need to say that we ultimately present to a judge? The judge does sign off on every divorce, every custody case, but we are presenting the documents to the judge, rather than the judge really not understanding how to do it or being willing to do it or having the time to.
Right. Yeah. Judges generally, in my experience, will sign off on things unless it looks, egregious in some way. And usually that has to do with a child support calculation more than anything else. They are generally happy to have a case resolved that they don't have to hear. They're, hitting the highlights on it and signing off on it. Personally, I haven't ever seen a judge reject an agreement by consent sent to them on any of these topics. And so it sounds like a judge may still have to pass their judgment on this. It really is quite routine. They're looking it over for the things that they have to look at, signing it, and usually quite happy to get that case moved along regardless, because the family law system is very bogged down.
Well, and that is in some ways overlaps with the vetting process of the amicable divorce process. So members are vetted for various aspects that really create a credibility with including the court. So the amicable divorce process produces these agreements that you want a judge to sign. And our membership, our professionals who the judges may know, because some of us, both of you and I,
been doing it a long time.
Before the amicable divorce process, where we were, Tracy Ann and I both spent many years in the crucible of that courtroom, and so we have built credibility with the courts. And so as members of the amicable divorce process, presenting proposals, if you will, to these judges, that credibility is very important. And so a lot of our membership either has been in that crucible of the courtroom and understands, or has worked with people who have been in that courtroom. And so we understand those dynamics.
Yeah, we vet all of our members. A 5-year minimum experience is the threshold. I would say most of our members far exceed that, 15, 20 years. And I think it comes from years of the adversarial process and this juxtaposition of like, this just doesn't work. This isn't the right tool for this problem, and pivoting to do something different. And even if I am not the expert in, a surrogacy issue that somebody might have, the good thing about the network is it is global. And most likely you have come across someone like Dennis, a different expert in the network, who is happy to get on a call with you, happy to send you a form, some language, talk out an issue. So we have, professionals that specialize in many numbers of things at our disposal, so that we are able to help any situation resolve itself outside of the court system. And Dennis, thank you very much for your work. Dennis is also one of our board members at Amicable Divorce Network, and he also chaired our LGBTQIA special designation. So if you are looking for a professional and you are particularly interested in one who specializes in LGBTQIA issues, you can look on our website and they will have a special badge on their profile. And if you have any questions at all about meeting with somebody, or any questions about this podcast, you're always welcome to reach out to us at info@amicableddivorcenetwork.com. Dennis, if people are listening to this and they would like to work with you, what is the best way for them to reach you?
My contact information is on my website, collardfamilylaw.com. Collard like collard greens, collardfamilylaw.com.
And he has a collard green in his logo, so it is all super cute. So thank you very much. If you're driving and listening to this and you have no ability to write that down, please don't. Just save this episode and come back to the show notes, and you will find all of Dennis's information. Dennis, thank you very much.
Thank you, Tracy Ann. I enjoyed it.